In the headlines, court sentences Abdulmalik Tanko Hashim to death by hanging. Borno governor expresses fear of IDPs joining terrorist groups over lack of funds. $70 oil benchmark projected for 2023 as FEC OK's medium-term expenditure framework. And on the foreign scene, 15 soldiers, 3 civilians killed in coordinated attacks in Mali. Hello and welcome to Trust News Update. I'm Dashan Husseina Usman. Now the news in detail. A Kano State High Court presided over by Justice Usman Naabba has sentenced proprietor of Noble Kids, a college, Abdulmalik Muhammad Tanko, 38, and 2 others to death by hanging for killing, kidnapping, and killing a 5-year-old pupil, Hanifa Abubakar. The convicts conspired and kidnapped the deceased from Sheikh Dahiru Bauchi Islamic Foundation School, killed and buried her in a shallow grave in Northwest Preparatory School located at Kwanari Angana in Nasarawa local government area, Kano. Prosecution team led by Kano State Attorney General Musa Abdullahi Lawang called 8 witnesses and tendered 14 exhibits during the trial. The witnesses include mother of the deceased, Murja Suleiman Zubair, DSS operatives who arrested Abdulmalik, and police officers who investigated the case. The exhibits tendered include confessional statements of the convict's photograph of the deceased, hijab, and Islamic school badge, among others. A Federal Capital Territory High Court has granted the suspended Accountants General of Federation, Idris Ahmed, and his co-defendants bail upon terms and conditions given by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Delivering the ruling, Justice Adeyemi Ajayi ordered that the defendants shall not leave the Federal Capital Territory, and should they want to, they would have to seek clearance from the court or have their bail revoked. Justice Ajayi also ordered that the defendants shall not procure alternate passports until the case is done with. Having deposited their original passports to the commission, the trial judge gave the ruling on the grounds that the allegations against the defendants are yet to be proven. Meanwhile, trial commenced immediately after the ruling on the bail application. Borno State Governor Umar Zulum has said the lack of funds to sustain IDP camps made his government resettle displaced persons back to their communities. He said this during the closure of Dolori 1, Dolori 2, Gubio, Amuna Garage IDP camps in Maiduguri metropolis on Thursday. Zulum expressed fear that the dwindling resources and poverty, if not tackled, may force IDPs to join Boko Haram and ISWAP fighters. He added that all IDP camps will be closed before the expiration of his tenure, saying there is a need to initiate a medium and long sustainable framework to curb the overdependence on humanitarian support. The IDPs were provided with cash, food, and non-food items as they returned to their ancestral homes.
I therefore wish to seize this opportunity to call upon the returnees to make good use of this assistance and support our resettlement effort in our determination to bring dividends of democracy to the doorsteps of our people. We need to shift our focus from the immediate humanitarian support to medium and longer-term sustainable solution. We can no longer continue to give our people at IDP camps. Anybody or any organization who is willing to support the government and people of Borno State has to channel its support through the government of Borno State. They are bringing resources from the non-governmental organization, especially the international governmental organization, to our IDP camps. That don't overtake. And therefore, nothing is being done. In the next few years, 1 or 2 years, most of those that are living in internally displaced camps will join these sort of Boko Haram group.
To support the rebuilding of the livelihoods of these families. And that includes now giving them cash support. This cash support is to help them go back to the sort of things that they did. So if they were farmers, it's to help them go back to the farm. if there were small businessmen and women, is to also help them to go back into these businesses.
The Armed Forces of Nigeria has resolved to deploy a new strategy in the coming weeks to deal with snippets of violence across the country. National Security Advisor Babagana Monguno disclosed this to newsmen at State House Abuja on Thursday at the end of an emergency National Security Council meeting convened by President Muhammadu Buhari. Major General Monguno also disclosed that the council was winding up the Special Investigative Panel on the attack on the Kuje Correctional Center. The idea, he explained, was to come up with recommendations that would hold those responsible for security lapses that enabled the attack. The NSA, however, urged the media to tone down its reportage of insecurity, as certain reports could aggravate this delicate situation.
Today's meeting was convened by the President as a continuation of the meeting that took place last week to discuss the technical issues and the taskings that were given to the various security agencies. The meeting deliberated on all those issues after the brief by the National Security Advisor, which is usually the procedure. Again, the Council has seen it necessary to inform the general public that fighting this type of asymmetric conflict is a collective effort. It's not something that should be confined to only the security, intelligence, and law enforcement agencies. When we keep saying whole of society approach, whole of government approach, to get a whole of nation approach, what it means is that everybody has to partake in this enterprise. The truth is that no country can ever overcome the difficulties of an asymmetric conflict by virtue of the fact that the enemy of the state is embedded within the population, within the wider society. It is true that the local people are averse, they're scared, they're worried, and there's no confidence. That is understandable. But without their support, without their cooperation in terms of giving information, it makes it very hard for the operational elements. A few days ago, troops of the Guards Brigade were ambushed and decimated.
The Ebonyi State government on Thursday denied the allegations on social media that herdsmen were involved in the killing of a young lady in Onitsha local government area. The body of the young lady from Amagboro village, whose name could not be ascertained, was found dead along a bush path between Agbegbo, Isu, and Onitsha Igboeze communities on Wednesday. The situation caused tension in the area as the youths raised a search party to hunt for the killers. The State Commissioner for Information, Uchenna Oji, said there was no evidence so far to link the murder to herdsmen, adding that there are no herdsmen residing in the area. The Minority Caucus of the National Assembly on Thursday met behind closed doors on the need for the Senate and House minority caucuses to be on the same page regarding the threat to impeach the president. The minority leader of the House of Representatives, Ndudi Elumelu, who briefed journalists after the closed-door meeting, said the House Minority Caucus is joining the Senate in its 6 weeks ultimatum to the president, adding that the signatures will be gathered to impeach the president if the security situation is not addressed. He also drew attention to the general state of the nation, including the exchange rate and aviation crisis.
And the whole world. That the both chambers have tried several times, either by resolution or by security summit, to draw the attention of Mr. President as to why there is need for us to address the insecurity of this nation. But that has not been taken very seriously. And of course, so many outcries by our people. Our farmers can no longer go to various farms. And I believe that we're worst hit in terms of food production. And this is because our farmers can no longer go to the various farms, and it is bad. And if you look at what happened also between Abuja and Kaduna, where the bandits bombed the train, and yesterday somebody was asked, one of them rescued was asked, will you ever use the train? And he said no, that he will never find himself using that train. So in effect, Nigeria is in a standstill. So having looked at all these scenarios and the reason behind why our colleagues walked out in the Senate, we're of the opinion that we'll also join them in the same way. They have given 6 to 8 weeks for Mr. President to address the insecurity that is, of course, affecting this nation. And I want to also join on behalf of my colleagues to say that upon the expiration, we will prefer ways of ensuring that we'll gather all the signatures. And let me make it very clear, those who are thinking that it's only issue of PVP or minority caucus, no. Many of our colleagues under the bipartisanship are affected. All of them are affected, many of them. So they may not be speaking, but we may be speaking for them. And when the time comes, I heard somebody this morning say that it's a laughable attempt to want to do that. But perhaps when the action starts, the person will find out that it's not a laughable action. It's real, and we will not stand to allow this nation collapse.
You're watching Trust News Update. Coming up after the break. Increasing women participation in agriculture. Do stay with us.
As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be? Do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children. Protect them from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NOAA.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Let's take a look at some of our top stories. We told you that court sentences Abdul Malik Tanko Hashim to death by hanging. You also heard that Borno governor expresses fear of IDPs joining terrorist groups over lack of funds. Moving to other stories, the House of Representatives on Wednesday urged the National Identity Management Commission to redesign the national identity cards to include the national identity number. The resolution followed the adoption of a motion of urgent public importance sponsored by Representative Frederick Agbedi. Agbedi, while raising the motion, noted that NIN is used by the government of many countries as a means of tracking their citizens' permanent and temporary residency for the purposes of work, among other reasons. The House therefore mandated its Committee on Interior to ensure compliance.
Also aware that the National Identity Management Commission began enrollment exercise in September 2010 and started the issuance of a multi-purpose identity card in 2013. And only recently, the Commission has started issuing a digital ID card, which displays only the name, age, and nationality of the holder of the ID card without displaying the NIN number. informed that a look at the face of the national identity cards issued by the Commission reveals that the Commission neglected or failed to include the national identification number on the face of the ID cards issued by the Commission. This has brought untold hardship on the citizens who, in a bid to retrieve their NIN via short codes provided by telecommunication service providers, still have to pay for services or service charges. Convinced that as important as the national identification number is, it is important that same should be reflected on the face of the national identity card for easy access and used to reduce the pains of the citizenry, as it is even now reflected in the current Nigerian passport issued by the Nigerian Immigration Service.
The Kebbi State Government has declared Thursday 28th and Friday 29th July as public holidays to enable civil servants of the state to either obtain or revalidate their permanent voter cards. Governor Abubakar Atiku Bagudu gave the approval on Wednesday in a statement signed by the acting head of service, Safiyanu Garba Bena, and made available to newsmen in Birnin Kebbi. The governor called on the people of the state to take advantage of the two-day holiday to exercise their civic responsibility so as not to be disenfranchised. Kano State Government has declared Monday, August 1, 2022 as a work-free day to mark the beginning of 1444 Islamic New Year. Governor Abdullahi Ganduje, in a statement signed by the Commissioner for Information, Muhammad Garba, on Wednesday, congratulated all Muslims in the state on the spiritual significance of the occasion that also calls for self-assessment. He called on Muslims to use the holiday to seek Allah's forgiveness and pray for his intervention and salvage the nation from the lingering security challenges and improvement in the general well-being and progress of the state and the country in general. Women farmers across Nigeria are meeting to discuss the operation of the national policy on gender in agriculture to increase the participation of women in agriculture towards achieving food security in Nigeria. Organized by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development in collaboration with the Partnership for Advancing Women in Economic Development, the meeting is part of the National Steering Committee's annual dialogue on promoting women in agriculture. The report.
Boosting agricultural production through the input of women in rural and urban centers reduces food imports and develops the economy. This underscores the need for a successful implementation of policies tailored towards achieving food security.
I think DRPC has a project referred to as POWED, which is a partnership for advancing women in economic development. Under POWED, they have a model where they encourage the formation of WECs, which is the women economic collectives or coalition. These are a group of women who are working in areas related to empowerment of women, whether it is agriculture, industry, etc., etc.
And it encouraged so many people to get, but we had issues of having to produce enough, sufficiently, because even at this point of singing agriculture in the country, we are still doing them manually.
Discussions are therefore centered on ensuring elimination of subsistence farming, effect of climate change, harmful practices that hinder women's participation, as well as investment in agriculture as an engine of economic growth.
So the ministry is really working assiduously to help women, because there is no way the new policy that is approved by the federal government, the NAFTIP, National Agricultural Transformation Innovative Policy, that will achieve all the content or the elements in the policy without incorporating women.
The gender policy has been stepped down in the states across the country. There is a high level of awareness among the women across the country, and especially in the different ministries of agriculture. For example, we are working on trying to create the gender desks in the various ministries of agriculture.
Other stakeholders in the sector say addressing the challenges of rural women in agriculture and full implementation of the policies will ease the burden.
We had worked with the Small Scale Women Farmers Organization in Nigeria to simplify the policy and supported the smallholder women farmers to develop their work plan, which they implemented by engaging with different ministries, departments, and agencies, commissioners for agriculture.
Experts say without investment in agriculture, especially in programs at the rural level that promote economic growth among women, food security would continue to elude the country. Aisha Salihu, Trust TV News, Abuja.
The House of Representatives has mandated all its agriculture-related committees to interface with appropriate ministries and agencies, as well as international development partners, to begin the process of establishing and implementing protocols to manage food resources and mitigate an impending food crisis. These resolutions, which were adopted by the House, were sequel to the motion of urgent importance raised at plenary by Rimamde Kwemum and Solomon Bob on the need to in place emergency programs and protocols for the impending food shortages. It therefore urged the National Emergency Management Agency, the Presidency, and Ministry of Agriculture to begin to make arrangements to mitigate the emerging food challenge. The Nigerian Air Force has assured that the Osun Aviation City project will not only be completed as scheduled, but that it would be the first of its kind in Africa. The Chief of Air Staff, Oladayo Amao, gave the assurance in Osogbo on Wednesday when the State Governor Adeboyega Oyetola formally handed over the project to him. Hamidu Igbade files in this report as presented from our studio.
The aerodrome in Ido-Osun was used for transporting soldiers during the Second World War. The site was acquired by Nigerian government in 1932 to build an airport. The large expanse of land had continued to lie fallow for the past 90 years, following non-execution of the project. With the latest partnership arrangement between Osun State Government and Nigeria Air Force, there is hope for the Osun Airport project. The State Governor Adeboyega Oyetola, while handing over the project to the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Oladayo Amao in Osogbo, and expressed optimism that the project will boost the economy of the state. The governor appealed to host communities to cooperate with the Air Force to ensure smooth construction and timely completion.
I must thank the Chief of Air Staff for his commitment to developing the aviation city. I mean, it's not just the airport alone. We're talking of infrastructure relating to aviation generally. The Air Force Base and some other things, the hangar. So I see it as an opportunity to really develop economic potentials, particularly in the area of tourism. Tourism particularly. We have a lot of tourist sites, but because of the possibility of not getting early enough, particularly transport through the air. With this now, I believe we have a lot of places to be.
The Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Oladayo Amao, who was represented by Air Vice Marshal M.O. Onilede, said the project will be completed as scheduled. He said the Nigerian Air Force would also build an aviation city in the state following the relocation of Air Force Research and Development Center from Kaduna to Osogbo. The project would include an aircraft manufacturing plant, a maintenance repair organization, and an unmanned aerial vehicle production center.
This is a major milestone towards the achievement of all the dreams that the Nigerian Air Force has regarding this particular project. We have, through the generosity and support of His Excellency, we have relocated the Air Force Research and Development Center, which was temporarily located at Kaduna. And we're looking for a very suitable place where we can site the Air Force Research and Development Center. And the governor graciously granted us a piece of this land for us to establish permanently the Air Force Research and Development Center.
On the foreign scene, at least 15 soldiers and 3 civilians were killed in a coordinated terrorist attack in Mali. The country's army on Wednesday said the attack is the latest deadly violence to rock the Sahel state. In Kalumba, near the Mauritanian border, the death toll on the friendly side is 12, including 3 civilians from a road construction company, the army said in a statement. The army death toll in Sokolo in central Mali was 6, with 25 others wounded and 5 of them seriously wounded. At least 17 people have been killed and dozens wounded in the southern Syrian province of Sweda in clashes between armed residents and gangs aligned with the government security agencies. Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said more than 40 people were wounded in the clashes, including civilians. The province has remained mostly shielded from the bloody conflict that has ravaged the rest of the country since 2011, but sporadic rallies have taken place over deteriorating economic conditions. The Syrian government is yet to comment on the violence, but reports say the fighting had quietened and negotiations over the settlement were underway. And finally, in sports, the Confederation of African Football has announced that the winners of 2022 African Women's Champions League will receive $400,000 in prize money, while the runners-up will receive $250,000. CAF President Mosepe, who announced this, said there is a need for the game to invest in the women's game. As for the Continental Championship, South Africa, who defeated host Morocco 2-1 in the final in Rabat, pocketed $500,000 in prize money from the CAF Women Cup of Nations in their first ever Africa Cup of Nations victory. Morocco will host the Women's Championship League, which is played in an 8-team tournament format following zonal qualifiers across the continent. Mamelodi Sundowns of South Africa won the maiden edition of the African Women's Champions League. And with this, we've come to the end of Trust News Update. Don't forget to follow us across all our social media platforms. I'm Dashan Husseina Usman. Thanks for watching.